We are here because we know the outcomes in our lives are within our control. That taking absolute ownership of how we eat, sleep, train, think, and connect with each other is how we'll optimize our health and happiness. That chasing excellence is how we grab hold of what is possible. Our mission is to live on the run, always chasing, never stopping. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. I said that really fast. How are you, Ben?
I'm very good, Patrick.
We're going to talk like this all the time. You're not a 2x speed. It's just going to sound like it. Imagine if you are a 2x speed and I just did that. You're freaking out. Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk about something. I'm actually really excited to talk to you about this because I've been thinking about it a lot myself, but focus, and specifically how to build a life of focus, or a life that respects and emphasizes focus. I think it's something that I've seen you, and I mean this in the best way possible, I've seen you struggle with it over the years, myself as well, is trying to figure out how to incorporate, how to make space for focus. And I think one of the fun things that I want to kind of dive into is I think there's different levels or different layers of this idea of focus. And so right before we were recording, I was thinking like, okay, there's two real big things here. There's big focus. There's like, where am I going? How am I going to get there? Where do I want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? You know, stuff we talk about a lot. And then there's micro focus. There is today, this week, what am I focused on? This month, what am I focused on? Maybe this quarter, if we're a team, or even on an individual level, what are we focused on this quarter? And so I want to play with those two. But then right before we started recording, you said there's actually a macro focus. And so I want to start there. Like, what to you are the levels or the layers of focus worth diving into?
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to frame it. And the other way I would say to talk about it is, so what's the thing that keeps us from focusing? And it's the opposite of focus is distraction.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the thing that ultimately distracts us the most? On the micro level, it's the pings and the buzzers and the tweets and the noises and all those things. And those are external distractions.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's internal distractions.
Yeah.
And those internal distractions, if we don't get those things dialed in, it's just another way of framing what you said.
Yeah.
In those internal distractions, if we don't get those in, it doesn't matter what those other ones are, because we're trying to, we don't have all the dominoes up.
You've already lost the battle.
Exactly.
Or the war, or whatever.
Yeah. You've lost the war and you're still fighting a battle.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Got it. Okay.
I don't know if that's a saying, but it is now.
I'm going to put it on a t-shirt. Yeah. All right. So where do you want to begin? It strikes me as one of those things that makes sense to go from big to little.
I agree.
And so I love that idea of internal distractions, but lay that out. What do you mean by that? What does that look like?
So the biggest thing that we are all up against is a thing that we feel like is inherent. We feel like it is just, we have no control over it. And it is the thing that pulls us away from what we are trying to do the most. And that is our emotions. We feel like we are a leaf blowing in the wind in terms of emotions. There is a trigger that's sent something off. And because of that trigger, emotions happen. Someone dies, we get sad. Someone says something mean to you, we get mad. You have a lot on your plate, you get anxious. You make a mistake, you have regrets. All of those things, it's like this equals this. That's not true. Those things that are happening, the only reason that you have that emotional response is because of your past conditioning. It feels so ingrained, it feels automatic, but it is not automatic. It's not it's not the reality of what happens. It's the way we interpret the reality of what happens. Mm-hmm. It is the story we tell ourselves about the trigger. So from a sequential kind of put this in practice in place, what happens is there is a trigger. When there is a trigger, you see a bee. Mm-hmm. When you see a bee, there is a thought. that thought is what creates the emotion. Now, it happens so fast.
Yeah.
And it's Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and slow. And whether it's the prefrontal cortex or the animal, lizard, amygdala brain, we can get into that stuff if we want to. But there's a thought. And that thought is what creates emotion. It happens so quickly that we think it's instantaneous. This happened, so now this emotion arises. Mm-hmm. By the way, just to play that out a little bit, the emotion leads to a physiological response. And that physiological response dictates our health and or our performance. So what we want to, this is kind of, and I got this from Nate Zinzer that we had on the podcast. Yep. It's such a beautiful framework. What he left out was the trigger. And that's...
Are you're talking about the sewer cycle?
Yes,
versus
exactly right.
Versus the success cycle.
So, but here's how it goes. It's the interpretation, it's the thought about that bee. So you grew up on a farm and you grew up honeybeeing with your mom. And to you, bees are the most integral part of the world. The world goes as the honeybee goes, the flowers and everything. The bee is the center of the universe. You think they're most amazing. You're so curious, passionate. And because you do it with your mom, there's so much nostalgia and love. When you see a bee, the thought that comes in your head is wow and excitement, which I should say is, I love this, which leads to the emotion, which is excitement, joy, passion, whatever it is, right? I see a bee and I'm allergic to bees. If I get stung, I might die. This isn't true, but I might die. So when I see them, the thought I have is worry. It's, oh my gosh, danger. So I have fear, anxiety, stress, all of the bad things. It is not the trigger to emotion. It is the thoughts that we think about them that get them there. Okay, let's pull it all the way back now. Because of this, we can get control over our biggest internal distraction, which is emotions. When we're doing something, there's triggers all the time. It's 3 o'clock and you get hungry, and that's hunger is a distraction. And now you're off doing something else. There's something else, you hear something and that triggers you into this sewer cycle thought process. What we need to do to not be at the whim of our emotions is recognize that with enough practice, and the practice is one simple thing, it's just a level of recognizing that we are a product of our past conditioning, which, by the way, if we don't recognize that, what that is called is living unconsciously. That is what it means to be unconscious, is you are just a slave to your past conditioning. This happens, so I'm this. Like someone dies, we're sad. That has not been the case for all of humanity. There are other civilizations that when someone dies, it's amazing. They're going to heaven. And it's this great big celebration. It's awesome. It's the way that we've framed things that allow us. That's how powerful it is. But you have a choice over how you frame them. And if we don't want to be distracted by every single trigger, we just have to start to harness that and break the pattern of preconditioning, become aware that this is a reality. This is not the reality. This is the way that we are framing our reality. And then we stop getting distracted, and then we get to truly live our lives, the big macro thing you were talking about, in line with our vision, our values, in terms of fulfillment in the big picture, not the distraction of mom wants me to get a job on Wall Street. So I'm going to go do that. That is a huge distraction. That is not what you want. That's your past conditioning. The thing that you go home every day and you think your wife is controlling. That's not necessarily the case, but that's a huge distraction. We can get into how you structure your calendar. Yeah. We can get into the apps you use on your phone. We can get into all of that. But unless you get the big thing first, all those things are not going to help you whatsoever. You're trying to build a sandcastle in the middle of a typhoon. Typhoon?
Sure.
Tidal wave?
Both.
Typhoon?
I think they're both the same.
Yeah, that.
Yep. That. Done. That's really interesting, and not at all what I expected to talk about, but I'll be totally honest, because this is really this is well timed for me, because I I've made a lot of progress over the last 20 plus years, but like I've struggled with anxieties around certain things in my life for as long as I can remember. And it just happened again last week. And what happens, and it took me forever to realize basically what you just laid out. It took me forever to be able to piece these things together. And what always happens is that the thing, whatever, it doesn't really matter what the thing is, because I think everybody's got their own little things that cause them anxiety. And so the trigger would always lead to fatigue for me. And fatigue would make me feel close to depressed is not the wrong word for that.
It's actually the other way around. So there's a thought which creates the emotion.
Yep.
The emotion is anxiety, which leads to a physiological thing, which is fatigue.
Yep. Yes. And the way, and again, immediate, automatic. Like I can't stress that enough, how little space there is between the trigger and the beginnings of that feeling. And for the longest time, I never recognized that they were related in any way. I just thought like, I don't even know what I thought. Like to get out of it, what I would do is I would do my best to avoid the things that avoid dealing with the thing that caused me anxiety, which was really an attempt to avoid it in the future. I don't want to deal with that thing again. So I'm going to avoid. So I built this like immediate feedback loop around these kinds of things that cause me this kind of anxiety. And it doesn't happen that often, but every once in a while it kicks, and it kicked in last week, I don't even know what day it is. But this time I actually recognized I'm not tired. Like I'm not underslept. I'm not like I work out. Like it's not tired. It's something else.
Cool.
And to finally realize, oh, frig, it was that. Because that's exactly when I started to feel it. And maybe it took me an hour or 2 hours to be like, what happened? Like what? And then I finally figured it out. And then what we've talked about before, we talked about it recently in an episode, the antidote to anxiety is action. It's going straight at it. And so I was just like, I'm just going to try that. And guess what? It worked.
Yeah.
Right? Almost immediately when I faced the thing, instead of avoiding it, instead of, it's not a thing, I'll deal with it later. Instead of that, just saying, nope, I'm just going to live with this for a few minutes. I'm going to fix it because that's all it is. It's like something's wrong and now you have to fix it. Suddenly the fatigue lifted again, almost immediately. And it's just interesting. It's just,
that is the highest level of distraction, right?
100%.
If you don't,
because 100%,
and it's with you all
Yes.
the time.
Yep.
It's with you all the
because
time.
if it's not happening, it's in the back of your mind that it could happen at any moment.
And it's always it's looming. It's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's always there in the background, waiting to pull you out of whatever you want to call it, your flow state, your focus, your
100%.
do hard work, all of that stuff.
The moment
and
that you're in.
the way to navigate, everyone's like, well, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? It is literally, there is not another step after awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difference between living an awoken and a spiritual life as opposed to the opposite, which is you are asleep and you are unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
You are nothing more than hardwired programming. It's like, we could just like, you're putting it in. If this happens, you're going to do this.
If this, then that.
If this, then that. It's an algorithm.
Yep.
It's the if-then scenarios.
Yep.
And what you can do is you can go, no,
Yep.
it's not if this, then that. I don't have to do that. But these things are so ingrained into us but they're not serving us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get out of that, like, well, if I don't go to college, if I don't get the good job, how is that? My mom is going to be super disappointed in me and ...
Yep.
If that's not what's you and your life, talk about living a distracted life. Yep. Forget about how to deal with emails. Should we do Tim Allen's emails or
Right.
should we do the
David Allen? Tim Allen's the comedian.
Tim Allen's the Buzz Lightyear.
Yes. That too. Yes. Yep.
But yeah,
100%.
you got to get that one. Then we can go with the map.
And it's so easy to because I'm happy to geek out about the micro and the calendar because I really could talk about it for hours. But like, it's so easy to just focus on that. It's so easy to forget that the thing that truly distracts us, the thing that truly pulls us out of focus is 4 levels deep, 4 levels up, whatever you want to call it. Because it's so much harder to work with those. It's so much harder to recognize it, to your point, to have enough awareness of it.
It's the people that want to know what's better, asparagus or broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
Which one's better for me? No, I want to know like, okay, what about what are brown rice or white rice? Is there a big difference? yet they're still having the sleeve of Oreo cookies at 11 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
It's like, I get it. Like, we can geek out about all the little micro stuff, but until you get these things in place, like, and the Oreo cookies thing is like, it's a question of why, because you know they're bad for you. Why are you going there? Yep. And that's until you solve that one. It's not going to matter whether you're having, you order sushi with brown rice.
Right. Totally. Okay. So one of the things you said is, I just want to, we've talked about it, I think, a little bit in the past, but I want to kind of spend just 2 minutes on it, which is, you said, the awareness is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, that's it. Like, that's the beginning and the end of the solution.
Yeah. So I was talking with my dad on the phone about this the other day. My dad's in Florida right now, but we were having a conversation. And I was kind of laying this out to him, and he was really interested about it. And my dad historically is, he identified himself through this conversation. He's like, I talked to him about the hierarchy of mindset. And he's like, I'm a pessimist. He's like, I didn't realize that. I thought it was something that really served me, because he came up through sales, and his philosophy was, if you look at all the things that could go wrong, you'll be a better salesman. If you, as a manager, if you look at all the things that you'll be more prepared. So he had pride in being a pessimist. When I laid this kind of out to him, he's like, okay, so if I want to raise up beyond the pessimist, if I want to live life more as a realist, which is, by the way, just recognizing that there is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Thinking makes it so. Thinking is what's creating your reality. He's like, how do I do it? I was like, you don't. You just have awareness of this. He was so dissatisfied with that. You just have awareness of it. If you don't have awareness, you literally are walking through life, sleepwalking. You're unconscious. It's the if-then scenarios programming. And then I called him a few days later, and he was like, he's like, that conversation changed me. I went to go see some friends I haven't seen because of the pandemic and stuff, but he's really close with them. One is a rabid Republican. One is a stout Democrat. Like there's this couple, and I don't know how they get along, but they do. Yeah. And my dad is very far right. Like, he's very far Republican. And when he goes there, it's like, that's what they do. Yeah. And when he went there, all of a sudden he heard the conversations they were having, and heard how it wasn't serving anything. They weren't moving it's awareness. They're popping up above and now seeing the actual reality of what's going on. It's not the thinking thing that's dictating what's going on. He's actually seeing above it. And he goes, there were so many moments that I had these zingers. I was just like, and in times past, I would have pounced. Yeah. But I was like, why? Like, why? Why would I play that role of the pessimist, of the argument? Why would I get in this fight when it's not going to get me anywhere? And I was like, that's it. Now, just like you've done, it's like you kind of like you're at a sandwich shop, you have your punch card, and you have to get 10 punch cards before you get your free sandwich. You've got one punch card. Now, let's just create awareness on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And that's literally how it happens. The same way someone doesn't become, that it breaks alcoholism. Until they go, whoa, they accept reality. It's that I have a problem. Like, there is no next step until that one happens. The next steps happen after that. Yeah. They just happen.
And they become more tactical.
There is actually another step, but it's almost like not even worth really, because it's the awareness step gets you to like mile 25.5 of the marathon. You need to go another few hundred feet to get to the next one. It's all awareness. You have to stop being unconscious and become conscious. This is why life will give you exactly what you need for the evolution of your consciousness. Every single moment that's happening to you right now is happening on purpose so you can elevate your consciousness. It's the purpose of us as human beings is to evolve that, to get out of the matrix and actually gain control of our lives. Now, if you do this at the best, I am so far from it. And actually, when you become a little bit more aware of this, what actually ends up happening to a lot of people, and we've talked about this, is you get a little bit depressed because you recognize how much work there is to do. And it's literally, it's kind of like the Matrix.
Welcome to the beginning.
Yeah. It's like in the Matrix. Like all of a sudden, like ignorance was bliss. I know the steak isn't real, but oh my gosh, it's so good. And now that you're in the Matrix, like you sleep in slime or whatever it is. I can't remember the movie, but life is tougher. You wear gray shirts and you're plugged in the back of your head.
Yes.
But the idea is that it's popping up and recognizing how much control you have over your life. You are not us. One is total freedom. Consciousness is total freedom. It's the freedom to make choices. You have a choice to respond to those triggers. The other one is total enslavement, where you have no choice. You're pre-programmed, you're preconditioned. It's funny that we started with focus on this, but that's what we have to do. If we want to be focused, we can't let triggers pull us away from what we're truly chasing, what we truly want in our lives. If we want to go and live in the woods, we want to go live in the mountains of Arizona. If we want to go, follow Zach Brown band around the world, and that's truly what. Don't be distracted by what other people are telling you to do. Mm-hmm. That's the highest level. Mm-hmm. Then we get into the more actionable stuff.
Mm-hmm. How much of the distraction is, you said it's emotions, and I agree with you on that. How much would you wager it's the emotions around expectations of others or others' expectations of us versus fear? Like where are, I know it's impossible to pinpoint because it's going to be different for everybody. It's different for me. It's different for you. But around what do those triggers, do those emotions tend to live?
It's all based off your past conditioning. What I mean by that is the way, so your environment when you grew up. Yep. So you may be triggered by certain external things or certain internal things. It's the reason that a lot of us became introverted versus extroverted. We found certain responses benefited us when we did certain things. If you grew up in a household with a lot of pain and suffering and trauma, that's what you identify with. Yep. And it's going to be a very different experience than somebody who grew up in a very loving, supportive, calm environment. So it's one of those things that you can't answer for somebody because we're all that. In that case, we are all those unique snowflakes.
Yep.
Yeah. And your triggers could come from much different things. Again, the biggest thing is the awareness level. And usually what pops up is the thought is hard to hold on to. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to become aware of that. The emotion, a lot of times, is hard to pinpoint. But where you found it is where most people can find it, which is the physiological, where it shows up. Yeah. I feel like a tightness I feel it in my gut. I can feel it right at the top of my, by my diaphragm, my top, below my solar plex, right there. That's where I feel when I get triggered. Yep. Heather feels it in her chest. Her chest gets tight. Tori, one of our coaches, feels it in her temples. Other people, their neck gets tight or whatever. Yeah. You can feel it happening. Yep. Some people get sick to their stomach. Yep. And that's when you feel there's more awareness to that, more and more awareness to that. And if you can bring, this is if there's a 101 guide on how to pop out and become more aware and take control of your life, it's this. Mm-hmm. And now what happens is when you become more aware of, wow, there's a lot of things that trigger,
create that. Yeah.
And allow that to happen a little bit, allow to experience the journey a little bit. Before you get fit, you have to get sore. Mm-hmm. Before you get fit, you have to sweat. Before you get fit, you have to hurt a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely speak to that. I think and I'd recognized it before, but for whatever reason this time it really stuck with me. But that feeling of fatigue, again, just for me, that's how it manifests in me. I recognized that for a long time. And I used to think it was other things. I used to think it was any number of other things, right? I used to think it was depression. I used to think it was, I used to think I was lazy, which is crazy to me. I'm not lazy, but there are moments that I've acted as though I was because it was precipitated by something that created a feeling, that created an action, and that action coincided with, that's what a lazy person would do. Is
that the most common sewer cycle loop that you have, the one that leads up to the fatigue?
100%. I like the other things like chest, toe, blood.
Yeah.
Don't feel any of those things. It is, I could fall asleep right now if.
Were you willing to share what the trigger is?
It is anything. The specifics. It really truly doesn't matter what the specifics are, but the trigger always comes from, the fear of embarrassing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have a moment where that felt like it happened, or it feels like it might happen.
Just you saying that, I can feel it. I can feel this I can feel it right now in my, right where I said it.
Yep.
Because I hate that. And that's why we both were introverts as kids.
100%. And I can actually draw it all the way back to like moments in my life that created this thing. Yeah. That doesn't mean I can pull myself out of it all, but that's what it is. It's like, there's something and, yeah, I mean, I don't know that it needs to be any more specific than that, but there are moments when, I feel like I'm being looked at and judged.
Yeah.
That it really gets me.
Yeah.
And it's gotten me for my entire life. Like every moment of my life where things were not good, I bet I could find the moments where like that was a big part of it. Or
you know what's so interesting? So play the story out. So something happens, the trigger, whatever it might be.
Yep.
It's the story you're telling yourself about that event, way more so than it is that event. So for me, my thing is, it's similar. It's when I feel like Heather is upset with me.
Mm-hmm.
When that's the thing that I get, will pull me right down. Yep. And it affects everything 100%. Else. If I don't feel like, at best case scenario, would be like, she's just not proud of me, right? But at worst is like, she's mad at me or angry at something, or we're not getting along. That's the thing that triggers me more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about that is it might not necessarily be what's going through her head at all, right? But it's a story I'm telling myself, which is creating that sewer cycle.
Yep.
And that's the biggest level of distraction possible. Like I can't do good quality, deep flow work if I'm in that. Totally. Like we can't.
Yeah.
It's the biggest distraction possible.
Yep. 100%.
It's to me, it's the same thing, which is the same thing is like, it's people are, but to me, it used to be if anybody did that. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten past that one a little bit of like, if somebody says it on, whatever. But it's when the people that are close to me, when I feel like the people that I care about, when I feel like they think less of me, that's the one that gets me the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So moving in a layer or up a level or whatever the right visual metaphor is here. So we've got this idea of, I don't know what you want to call it, but emotional distractions.
I'll call that like internal.
Internal. Got it. Then becomes the next level, the next layer, which is at least as a beginning point to this conversation is I think similar to what we've talked about as the fulfillment framework.
Yep.
In the sense of I have these ideas, these dreams, these goals, these visions for where I'm trying to get to. And now I'm trying to build my life in such a way that I actually take steps closer to those every single day versus hoping I get there someday. I hope I do that thing. I hope I write that book. I hope I fall in love. I hope I whatever, right? Actually breaking that down, if that's the right way, and saying, okay, how do I live a life that moves me towards fulfillment, towards satisfaction, towards my goals and my dreams? Where do you begin? And again, we've done a conversation about that. We've done an episode on that, but just in the context of this conversation, where does that fit in and how do you begin that?
Yeah, I would say this is the next internal. Yep. Like the first one is like really deep inside. Yeah. It's like you got to tug at some really hard strings to figure that out. This one's the internal one. And as you said, it's that fulfillment framework. And the fulfillment framework, and we've done an episode on this, once you structure it, I'll talk a little bit about that. Then it becomes awareness, intention, and action. Yep. So that's the way awareness of truly what do I want? Do I want to create a life of calm and peace where I have coffee by the lake every morning? Or do I want to create a life of fame and notoriety and whatever? You have to have awareness of what it is that you think will ultimately fulfill you.
Yep.
Then you become intentional, and that's where the framework comes in, and then you take action.
Yep.
So the framework then is a matter of laying out the steps. So if we think of focus, which is what we're trying to frame this whole thing around, focus, the opposite of focus is distraction. Well, flip it back. If it's the opposite of distraction is actually not focus, it's traction, not distraction, it's traction.
Yep.
So how do we gain traction? It's what you just said. You create the actionable steps that we can take. And this is the intentionality. And you start at the big, massive framework of like the big, hairy, audacious goal, the life mission, what do you want? And then you break that down into what is the next things I want to accomplish. And we've done plenty of work on this. And that's how we piece this whole thing together. You take awareness, intention, and then massive action towards those things without being distracted. And when you do that, that's when the life of fulfillment, that's what chasing excellence comes to life. And if you do this, and I've talked about this, it's so cool what you can create.
Yeah.
It's, I lived a pretty distracted life as in the early parts of my, young adult. And by fumbling and stumbling around and try to, like, what we love to do is create frameworks to things. It's like, well, how do you create the framework to your life? I really feel like this is as good of a working playbook as you can come up with.
Yeah.
And it gives you the step-by-step process that you can just take massive action towards.
When you say, so awareness, intention, action, where, bring in the conversation we just had about the internal, and the internal. Probably need a better word for those.
We'll call it emotional as the first one. I think that's good enough.
Where can you get that middle level right if you haven't gotten the core figured out? In other words, if I didn't understand these,
you
triggers,
can still do it a really good job,
Yep.
but you're not going to you're going to get distracted when you're taking action.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Because you're going to be pulled in some direction because of emotion, because of fear, because of whatever these triggers are.
Fear commonly is the one that's going to, it'll manifest as different things: stress, anxiety, doubts, whatever it is. But really it comes down to fear of judgment, fear of failure. That's the one that's going to steer you off course, because you go, no, I should still go get my MBA. Yep. No, I should take the safe route. No, I should just avoid that hard conversation.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the emotional one and the trigger one intact, you're gonna think you have no control over it. Yep. It's just gonna be a thing that, like, and that's what we want to do, is not be enslaved. We want the ultimate freedom to live the life on our terms. Yep.
Yeah, the thing I think about that is in line with that, and I think just reinforces it, is what I always think about when it comes to focus or even brand to a large degree, or business or whatever it is we're trying to do. We sort of have two brains in a way. We have like planning brain, who isn't triggered by anything, who's calm, who's confident, who's excited, who's able to look out 6 months or a year and say, yeah, that's where we're going. That's what we're doing. Let's figure out how we're going to get there. So we got planning brain. Planning brain is amazing. And then we have acting brain, which is like, wakes up every day and it's like, I'm hungry. I'm in a bad mood. I can't believe she just said that to me. Maybe I'll do that. That's shiny and fun. I'll go do the easy thing. Right. Like, and so we're constantly trying to rely on planning brain, and yet we wake up with action brain. And so to me, what we're trying to do is trust planning brain as much as possible, because that is the brain that was calm, that wasn't triggered, that wasn't hungry, that slept plenty, that all of like the things we want to be all the time. And acting brain is just all over the place sometimes.
Yeah, that's such an awesome way of describing exactly what's going on in the brain. The crazy part is the acting brain is the one that controls you. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is there's the planning brain, the thinking brain, the logical brain. Yep. That's the prefrontal cortex, and it does exactly that. It does what it's supposed to do. It's calculated. It thinks things through. It problem solves. It's totally logical and rational. Mm-hmm. Like it matters. The other one is the lizard brain. It's the animal brain. It's the one that gets spooked. It's the one it's the reactive brain. Exactly. And as much as we like to think human beings are calculated, logical, and rational, we're not. We actually make decisions with the amygdala, the other part of the brain that is the animal part of the brain, the one that's going to go like, nah, I really, it's the reason why we all plan, we all want to eat healthy, we all want to go to the gym, we all want a six pack, but it's the reason most of us don't, because we don't listen to that one. The logical brain would go, yes, have a salad, go to the gym, go for a run, get plenty of sleep, and it makes total sense. But when it comes to push a shove, it goes, yeah, but tonight let's order a pizza. We'll do the run thing tomorrow. And tonight, let's have a couple drinks with our buddies. And let's stay up all night to watch Monday Night Football. It's like, that's what we end up doing because we listen to that one. Good companies, you like this part, good companies know that. And they play on the emotional part of the brain. And that's what great brands do. Apple, think different. Microsoft, the amount of features it has, and listen to car commercials. The new Ford F-150 with a tailgate that drops down and payload and V torque and all this. They're playing off. They're not doing it well. Then listen to like brands like Apple and Nike, which tug at your emotions. Those are the ones that you gravitate towards, and you'll buy anything from them because they're the ones that you get to. The emotional brain is the one that distracts us. So what we got to do is get control of that guy. That guy, when he's running the show, you're unconscious. And what we need to do is become aware and conscious of that.
So what does it look like in your life? And I'm happy to do the same, but what does it actually look like in practice for you to push away reactive brain? Because he's in there. And emphasize, focus on planning brain or whatever we want to call it.
Okay, so here's the really unsexy answer is discipline. I mean, that's what it takes. It takes making some hard decisions. And it means, we talked about this a long time ago, but it's successful people experience short-term pain for long-term gains. Unsuccessful people go towards short-term pleasures for long-term pain. And I don't mean like stubbing your toe. I don't mean losing a loved one. What I mean is having the salad instead of the sleeve of Oreo cookies. What I mean is going to bed and staying up for Monday Night Football all night. What it means is having the water instead of the alcoholic drinks. What it means is sitting down, buckling down, and focusing on your work, which will get to the tax on that time blocking and all the rest, instead of scrolling Instagram. It's like, it takes discipline. Now, there's some tools and tactics, which I know you love to talk about as well, that we can kind of use to help support us. But the real truth is, whenever you're putting those things take discipline. And the real hard truth is, it's just what it comes down to. And it's with us saying, where discipline again is going to equal freedom. If we want the freedom to live our lives on our terms, we have to have the discipline to do some of the hard things in the short term.
What do you do to remind yourself of the things you want to be disciplined around? Which, I have a good sense of what those things are, but like, I want to focus on this. I want to focus on that. What do you do to make sure you stay conscious of those particular things so that you have that moment of awareness, so that you can make that more disciplined decision?
So this is where I think the power of rituals and routines come in, which is if you can do things that benefit you unconsciously. Like most people understand that brushing their teeth twice a day is really powerful. So what they've done is they've turned that into a ritual. So which means they don't have to think about it. It's just part of it. Now, brushing your teeth isn't fun. Some people might like the feeling afterwards, but you could be doing much cooler stuff than brushing your teeth.
My 2-year-old loves brushing his teeth.
That's awesome.
One of the most fun things he does.
That's amazing. So that's so cool. But that's the deal, is like you have to, if you can create a ritual around it. So that's what happens in the beginning. It takes discipline to create the ritual and the routine. If you do it systematically enough, it just becomes a part of what you do.
So it's interesting. It's kind of like taking something unconscious, making it conscious so that you can make it then unconscious again.
Yes.
But in a direction with better directionality.
That serves you.
Yeah.
Right? Because other people unconsciously come home, crack a beer, turn on the TV, and start snacking on the chips.
And all of a sudden it's midnight.
Exactly. And that's an unconscious act as well. And what we have to do is exactly right. I love that. Is that circle is like you're living unconscious, become conscious to create the right habits to then be able to do them unconsciously again.
Yep.
That's a really cool.
That's interesting.
Like habit loop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about, and I don't want to do the whole episode again, the fulfillment framework, but like where and how does that become real to you? These ideas, these disciplines around these particular things, whether they're habits, whether they're values, whatever you want to call them. Where do they actually show up in your life?
So create the 10,000 foot view of what is that you want. And, it doesn't have to be specific, but it has to be directional. Example, like I said before, I would love to be able to, wake up every morning with total peace, sipping a cup of coffee on the lakeside and watch the sunrise. And that's, you don't have to be that specific, but that's what you understand what is you're creating. Then from there, it's just kind of like, what are some of the moving pieces that need to get you there? Well, I need to, I'm trying to be super specific to that one, but let's say that's want to be able to have enough financial means to be able to do that, to have financial security to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that with my wife and have an incredible relationship where we can share that moment every day. And if I don't have that, I'm doing it by myself. And that's definitely not what I want. And I'd love for my kids to want to be with me all the time and visit us all the time. So now you create these things like, okay, so I need to really pay attention to my wife, got to create my kids, got to do this thing for my career. So now you got these kind of like pillars of which we need to build that thing upon. And then from each of those, what's kind of the long-term objective for each of those, the 3 to 5 year thing? Well, for a career, I need to be financially independent, right? I need to not be able to work. For my wife, we need to be massively and passionately in love with each other. For my kids, they need to be in a good place, ... Okay, now what are the moving pieces we need to get to there in the next year? And now it gets really tactical and actionable. So you break that year into quarters. Now you have 90-day, 3-month periods. And you go, okay, in this quarter, what's the 1, 2, or 3 things I want to make sure I'm tracking towards that 1-year goal? Cool. Let's time block every week areas to make sure that I have the ritual routine set up that I can actually work on those things. Yeah. So one of the things that I found that I was missing a lot was the busy lifestyle. That if I wasn't intentional, was my own personal finances would get pushed to the side. Yeah. Yep. And then every 9 to 15 months, I'd have a crisis, right? Yep. Which is like, I don't have car insurance. What the hell? Like, how do I not have car insurance? Because I'm just it's not a place that I like to put my time and attention. Totally. Yep. And that's a true story, actually. Last summer, I found out I didn't have car insurance. Like, talk about not chasing excellence. Yeah. But so what I found was that's a hole. So now every week, twice a week, I have an hour blocked off for personal finance and admin, where I can do like pay my own bills, check in on things. If I need to transfer money to something, if I need to talk to an accountant or a lawyer, it's like and now I've gotten that blocked out down into the weekly schedule. And once you have that time blocked, if something else is like something that needs to do that, okay, and we've talked about this before, but you can't delete it. You have to move it to another spot in the week. Yep. So you still have that. Okay, so that's beginning to get a little bit to them. So we've got macro, or internal, and then is that where we start to get to external? Is some of these things? Is that where we start to move outside of our own selves? Exactly. So now we're into the more external stuff. Yep. And the way we can do that is kind of what you said in the last podcast is offensive or defensive. Right. Yep. Which is defensive is like, how am I going to make sure I own my time? And the or said another way is like to make sure that would be more the, let me back up. Defense would be like not allow distractions in. Yep. So what am I going to do to make sure that happens?
Yeah. Yep.
So whether it's the apps on the phones that like turn your phone off at a certain time, the do not disturbs. And then the offensive would be time blocking, you going in, make sure you own your calendar, make sure that you're putting your priorities in place, making your schedules right, and all of kind of that Eisenhower matrix of understanding what's urgent and important. Those things have to get done now. What are things that are important but not urgent? Those things need to get scheduled. What are the things that are urgent but not important? Those things that need to get delegated. And what are things that are not important, not urgent? Those are things that you should be avoiding at all costs.
This is only a slight tangent, but I want to add it because we had done another episode of Hopper Talk where a crazy statistic. So I was always kind of looking out for them. And I had one, and one came across my email from the Flow Research Collective, which is Kotler's company. And so this is only sort of related, but it's worth putting out, which is, and this is just in an email they sent out. The real problem is not only massive, but it's everything, everywhere, all the time. The average knowledge worker is only productive for 2.3 hours a day. Every week they spend a day duplicating work that they did the week before. They check their email 36 times an hour. They're interrupted 56 times a day. They waste 36 hours in unnecessary meetings a month. And most devastating at all, the average knowledge worker gets a grand total of 11 minutes of focus per day. 11 minutes of focus per day. And that's from the American Institute of Stress.
Here's the way that we're doing this internally at our business. We frame the week to make sure that we're not falling prey to that. Yep. We have Mojo Mondays, which is where we come together as an organization. We talk about really high level things, events coming down the road, but really it's a chance to get together and make sure we're establishing a really strong culture. Team Mojo. On Tuesdays, that's kind of our meeting day, and that's where we have Team Tuesdays, where you have your team meetings. Wednesday is Deep Work Wednesday, where at least one day of the week, you're not allowed to email, Slack, or have a meeting. You have to just do your work and focus. So we're not falling prey to that. At least one day a week, we're blocked out completely for you to just get into your deep work. So if it's 11 minutes a day, is that what it was?
11 minutes of focus a day.
So we're allowing someone a full work day of that. Thursdays, we call Thorough Thursdays, a chance to, again, meet with make sure you're getting your weekly, we run on weekly stuff. And then Fridays, we call Freeform Fridays, Freedom Fridays. If you have your work done, you go do what you want to do.
I love that.
Anything you want to do. It can be a 4-day work week if you want. And so we're trying to be incredibly intentional with that. We have had a lot of discussion about Slack, email, text, and the people that find that Slack is not a distraction are staying on it, and the people that do are off. Everyone used to have to be on it. I am not on Slack anymore. I don't need another channel. And it's also understood that if you send an email, you do not expect an immediate response. I do not want my employees to be email monkeys. They're just like, that's not the job. I think email is the biggest distraction in the workplace. I think social media is the biggest distraction outside of the workplace.
Yeah. So I love that. And kudos to you for that, because that is rare. And I'll just add my perspective as somebody who just solo here doing my thing. One thing that is similar to that is also really powerful to do if you're in the position where you're like, this is what I do. I just do it on my own, whether I'm a freelancer, contractor, whatever it might be. I have my own business, solo. I've maybe got a small team. But one really powerful technique is something called day batching. Day batching is looking at the various roles or buckets in the business or whatever it might be, and saying, okay, on Tuesday, I'm going to wear that hat. So I'll just use myself as an example. My work weeks are typically are Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The other 2 days a week, I watch the boys, and then Sundays are family day. And so the way it works for me, it's going to be different for everybody, but Tuesday and Friday are my client and coaching days. Calls, if I need to schedule a call, I'm working on a website, updating my own website, whatever, Tuesday and Friday, I know that that's when I have the days to do those. Thursday is podcast only day. And so we're talking on a Thursday. I edit podcasts here. I organize, I schedule, I upload, all the things happen on Thursday for this and for the podcast I have with EC. And then on Saturday, it's building day. So it's Saturday, which is really nice. Nobody wants to talk to me on Saturday. And so that's when I save all of my project work for the things internally that I'm building. And so what that allows you to do, and what I imagine, and I'm curious if it allows in the team context as well, is it allows you to have a sense of where things happen or when things happen when they come in. Okay, Ben just sent me that email. Okay, I don't have to worry about that because I know I'm going to talk to him on Thursday because that's whatever the Thursday day is, right? And I don't know if it exactly works, but for me, when I have stuff come in, when I'm planning something for this podcast, for example, I never have to think about when I'm going to do it because I know it gets done on Thursday. And so if something comes in, like I don't live in a world of fire alarms and urgent things and things need to be answered right now. And oh my goodness, it's going to break. And I think what I love about you is you're making sure that the culture doesn't accidentally become one that it feels like we put out fires here, because that's where things get dangerous.
If you're not intentional with creating calm, it's going to default to chaos.
Exactly. And so that's individually, that's team-based. You have to put in constraints and parameters and systems and habits and structure so that you don't react to things that don't need to be reacted to right now. And so all of that to say, like, I think that's such a powerful way to start thinking about, well, what is, like, most people are Monday through Friday. Like, what is Monday? What do I focus on? And that doesn't mean that some things don't slip in. That doesn't mean like I ignore my email until whatever, or if a client reaches out, doesn't mean I just like, oh, I don't deal with you until Thursday. Or Friday. That's not what that means. But it does mean, back to planning brain and acting brain, it means my planning brain has already made a decision. And on Monday or Tuesday when I wake up, I just have to listen to planning brain, because acting brain probably wants to spend all the time building stuff. Acting brain, I would just come here and talk to you every day if if there was any logic to it, right? Like that to me is those are easy. Those are fun. They're hard, but they're like, I would rather do that. And so planning brain says, okay, I see that. You have your time for that. That you've got space for that. You can do that then. But today is you've got to go build that website that somebody's paid you to do, whatever the thing is, right? And so starting to organize yourself around days so that you remove, because the thing I think that we all run into too often is, okay, I sit down, what am I going to do today? I don't know. Let me look at my email, look at my DMs. Oh, social media is interesting. And then we get to the end of the day and we're like, I don't know if I actually accomplished anything today. I don't know if I made any real inroads to that thing I said I wanted to get done in a year, or that place, that lakeside property did I make any progress towards that today? And most of the time, if we don't build in structure, if we don't build in discipline, if we don't build in constraints, we don't. We just spin our wheels.
Yeah, and that's the big one right there. We're spinning our wheels, and it's not that we're not busy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's that we're not effective.
Yep.
We should never confuse busyness with effectiveness. What we have to do, that's my version of hell, is working my ass off for something that ultimately doesn't matter. That's the worst thing you can possibly do. So what we need to do is figure out what's going to be the most impactful things for me to do, and then not allow myself to be distracted. And the reason we got on that, we know this inherently, but the email thing, the reason that's such a distraction, I'm not saying don't read email, but the switching cost from going to email to coming back to what you're doing, to going to email to coming back to what you're doing, to rereading the same email that you've read before and saying, I'm going to do that later and coming back to it, that's not being productive. And people don't understand the cost of switching tasks. And that's why you're talking about giving yourself a full day is amazing, right? Other people, like writers, that's why they move to the mountains and kind of type away with no distractions. So they just get there and they're completely batching it. But what we want to do is allow yourself small windows to, I'm not saying don't check email each day, but you're probably a lot more effective if instead of thinking about checking email for 4 minutes, allow yourself 4D minutes to check email that's scheduled and intentional. It's not wrong to do something that doesn't move you forward, like email, like social media, as long as it's done with intention. It's not wrong to sit on the couch and watch Gossip Girl with your wife, as long as you're doing it intentionally and you're not doing it as a distraction. So what we want to do is make sure that if you're actually doing that because it's the most productive thing you should be doing, and we got to get away from is this spinning wheel of activity, but we're not moving anywhere.
Let's finalize this conversation on the thing that feels, at least I think on the surface, is to be the most distracting thing, the thing that pulls us out of focus the most, which is social media. Thoughts on how to use social media with that kind of intention that you're speaking of, or even I would even throw email in there because we've started to talk about it a little bit. But like
I would put the
things
distraction at the most distracting thing. I don't think there is a most. I think it's all of the things, and it's good. The answer is going to be the same for all of these things, because it's if you work in an open work environment where you don't have even cubicles. Yep. Distractions are going to come in through any one of your 5 senses, right? So it could be if a fire alarm goes off, that's massively distracting. Well, that's noise. Yep. And then if you hear a conversation going off, like, oh, I'm being pulled over there. Yep. Or again, if you all of a sudden a strobe light or the lights go out, that's really distracting. But so is a more subtle thing of just somebody walking by your desk. Yep. It's a distraction. So the answer to all of these things is the senses. Again, a skunk goes by, your smells, you're going to be massively distracted, but it's always going to come in through one of the senses. Yep. And the answer is going to be to protect your environment. And whether that's recognizing that it's your phone, which is the thing which speaks to so many of your senses. They figured that out. Yep. It's not just
it buzzes, it beeps, it vibrates.
There's touch even. Like it's everything, right? So whether it's your phone.
If they make it start smelling, I'm throwing it out the window. So
what did you do to control your environment? Because you took massive measures to control your environment.
I literally built a small office in the woods.
That's controlling your environment to the nth degree. Yep. You have no distractions out there, particularly if you leave your phone somewhere else and you disconnect the internet, right? But that's what we need to do is control our environment. It's why... Same
thing with our health, right?
Our 100 words of health starts with create an environment that makes it easy to eat, sleep, move, think, and connect better. Yeah. That's what it starts. It always starts with taking control of our environment, which, by the way, we do have control over. Sometimes more than others. If you go to a place that has a very distracting workplace, you might not have as much as you want, but let's try to figure out how to gain more control. Is it headphones? Is it finding a corner facing a wall? Is it taking extra, I think, whatever it is?
Yeah, I think it's worth just pinpointing what is also an environment like you. For me, it's different. For you, it's building a culture around we don't distract each other.
Right.
We work together.
That's the environment of the
workplace. But we don't
distract
each other. We're not just like, oh, I don't really want to do that thing. I'm going to go see what Heather's up to.
Yeah.
And just go shoot the shit.
We don't, even to the point where, so we purposely set up if we're doing it right and we're not perfect and we do mess up on this, we shouldn't need to talk to each other except for a weekly meeting. Because we should work on a weekly cadence. And at that weekly meeting, that's where we bring up all of our issues. And anything urgent, we're really trying to weigh and measure, is this really truly urgent, or we just feel it's urgent? Can this truly wait till our Thursday meeting or not? And if we're doing this well, I shouldn't need to come to you at any point outside of that. And then we have our meeting. That meeting is very well structured with the agenda where we go over the issues list. We go over last week's to-do list. We go over identify, discuss, and solve the problems. We're seeing, are we tracking on our quarterly rocks? We put the whole thing together. And now, cool. See you next Thursday. Go do your stuff. As long as you're doing your daily stuff and getting your weekly to-dos turned into weekly to-dones and your quarterly rocks are on track, like we're good. Like that's the deal. I shouldn't need to come and go, hey, Patrick, what do you think about this? That's serving me. Man, is it not serving you? Yeah. It's the worst, not the worst thing. There's really bad things, but it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Okay, last question for real then, because I could literally talk about this for hours. What is, and you can answer this both for team, brand, business, an individual, what is the downstream effects of building a life, building a culture, building the habit of focus in your mind? What happens when you do that? What is downstream of those of making that important to you?
You can manifest what it is you want, because that's what it is. We're focused. Now, it should begin with intention, because if you focus on, it should begin with awareness, because you can focus really hard, but it's not the right things. And this is what we talk about all the time. You end up climbing a ladder only to get to the top and realize it was leaning against the wrong wall.
Yeah.
If you have awareness in the beginning, then all of that intentionality can lead to diligent, focused action. And then we end up where we want to. If we begin with the end in mind and you aren't distracted, you have the framework to do the work, you manifest a life of fulfillment.
Love that. All right, we're going to wrap it up there, even though I could keep talking about this. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. We'll be back next week for another episode of Chasing Excellence. You can get every episode of Chasing Excellence wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Until next time, thank you for listening.